Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to Olainfarm Investor Conference webinar about financial results and company's activities of the first quarter of year 2018. Today we are hosted by Olainfarm Management Board member Salvis Lapiņš. Before I give the floor to Salvis, a short reminder about the agenda of the webinar. As always, we will start with the company's presentation, after which Salvis will answer all your questions. If you would like to use this unique opportunity to ask a question directly to Mr. Lapiņš, please use the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. All questions will be addressed after the presentation. However, you can send the questions in during the presentation. Salvi, I invite you to start the presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see that nice sunny day has not really influenced the attendance of this webinar. But still, I'll try to make not that long, but of course I'll try to answer all your questions. And there might be quite a few, since quite a few things have happened since we last spoke. Now let's start first with first quarter and see how we've been performing in this first quarter. So you already have seen that our sales had a record first quarter sales this last quarter of 30.8 million euros. You see in the chart, this is our best first quarter and one of the best quarters in general. This represents an increase by about 8% compared to the first quarter of last year. To this, pharmacies have added a net of 2.5 million, Silvanos has added 1.1 million, and Tonus Ilust and Elast Medical combined have added about 2 million to these sales. If you look at the profits, according to unaudited results, we made 3.1 million euros in net profit, which is a reduction by about 15% compared to last year, and we made 3.6 if I remember correctly. You can see in the chart that this chart is sort of an average kind of chart in terms of profit. This is 3-ish million has been around for quite a while in different quarters throughout the year. Well, it was adversely impacted by forex loss about 0.5 million euros, and about compared to last year where we had about the same amount of forex gains. So that has also made quite a difference to the results of this year's first quarter. For those of you who have followed the P&L statement of ours, you'll see that the gross margin is slightly lower than it used to be before. However, the gross profit, of course, has increased in nominal terms. Main reason behind the reduced gross margin is, of course, the different product mix than we used to have before. This first quarter, and you'll see that later in the presentation, we have had many more chemical products on sale than before, and those, of course, have smaller margin. And also, of course, the adverse fluctuations of Russian ruble have also left the adverse impact on the profitability. Now, 12-month EBITDA has increased by 1.4 million compared to rolling 12-month EBITDA a year ago. Now we have it at 18.5 million euros. That's 8% increase in the same period. EBITDA margin, however, still remains at 15% as our sales grow. So margin is about there, and of course, in nominal terms, we are increasing. Now, very typical first poll, since we have a little insight to our quarterly results. And it is, what do you think of our quarterly results? Are they just as you expected? Are they maybe better than you expected? Or are they worse than you expect and you were hoping for something more? So take a few minutes before we proceed voting, before we proceed to next slides. And as usual, we'll be going into details about which products and which countries did that growth come from. As usual, focusing on Olainfarm's top products and top countries. You will see there are some newcomers to our top 10 product list. and see how much growth different countries have contributed. But I'll give you a few more seconds to answer your poll question. I hope, you all have enough time for that. And in the meantime, I'm glad to see that the number of participants has increased, including the sort of staff. There will be 20, so nice. Well, I think it's enough. We had enough time to, thank you. So now let's proceed. Let's proceed to the sales by countries in Q1. Fine. Sales by countries in the first quarter. You see that Latvia and Russia have pretty much switched the positions and shares. Latvia being the leading country with 29% of all the sales made by our group here, followed by Russia with 27% and Belarus by 15%. We'll see that in a couple of next charts as well, that Belarus share has indeed increased quite significantly throughout the year. Last year at Q1 it was also only 12% of our sales, and now it's going to 15%. Also, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Germany have gained 1 percentage point each. Netherlands, Georgia, and Italy are no longer in our top 10 countries, and they are replaced by Japan, Uzbekistan, and India. We of course remember that Netherlands is not really the Netherlands. It's pretty much our agreements, our cooperation with the World Health Organization. Products intended for World Health Organization were shipped to Netherlands and then onwards to pretty much the entire world. So we're not doing that well with WHO in Q1, so Netherlands are out of top 10 countries. But Japan is in, and in Japan it's Memantine. We had nice shipments during this first quarter. Now let's look at the products. So you see the famous product, salicylic acid is no longer in top 10, pretty much for the same reason as WHO was, of course, the main buyer of that one. But you see the new leader for this quarter, it's Nufen, with 18% shares. It's increased by 8 percentage points. So last year's first quarter, Nufen had only 10% of share of our total sales. Very good sales to Russia of Nufen. You see that in some upcoming charts. Fluoroquinone products and Neuromedine also increased their shares, but lost the position because of perfectly performing Nufen. Not only Pasta did leave the top 10 products, but so did Remantadine. Obviously, the outbreak of flu wasn't as big this spring as previous springs, and they are replaced by Memantine, 4% share, quite a big one for a product that's not regularly on our top 10 list. And Meldonium also gained 1% in our shares and is now appearing as one of the top 10 products of Olainfarm. So if you look at the growth by products, so Nufen, as you see, has increased dramatically. Like I said, mainly because of increased sales to Russia in Q1. Not sure it's really sustainable, that increase. And my expectations are that increase will diminish throughout the second, third, and fourth quarters. But still, in monetary terms, it added 1.6 million just in one quarter. Neuromedine also added nicely 500,000, and Memantine added 400,000. Well, R3 quinoclidinol added 914%. Of course, that's because of quite a small base last quarter. Memantine added 219%, and Neomedantane added 133% in relative terms. Now, it all comes, that's our good news. The bad news, again, of course, are Pasta. You see a dramatic decline there from by 1.7 million. So you see it's no longer even in top 10 products of ours. And Remantadine, of course, also has been reducing dramatically. If you look at the countries, the same picture is pretty much confirmed here. You will see that Netherlands, of course, are not even in top 15. But in monetary terms, it's Latvia. It's a leading country that added 1.4 million, and so did Belarus. For both of these, I'm particularly happy because these are both countries with quite a big base already, and managing that high growth is really quite an achievement in these markets. In relative terms, of course, the biggest growth is again for those with the smaller base numbers, like Japan with 850%, Uzbekistan, which was performing very poorly in Q1 last year, and India, pretty much the same case, one of the small countries. We were not performing that nicely in all the other markets, in Italy and Poland, as you can see in the slide. Yeah, that's pretty much for the first quarter of this year. And as you know, 2 days ago we had an AGM, and that's pretty much the major recent event that I would like to focus on. No major surprises. Most of decisions that were expected were taken, including dividends were declared of almost 3 million euros in total. New auditing committee members have been elected, new supervisory council elected, sales and profit targets approved along the lines that the board identified earlier, meaning that we expect standalone sales of 96 million euros and standalone profit of 10.9 million euros, and consolidated sales of 130 million euros and consolidated profit of 11.5 million euros. Now, for those of you who follow our monthly publications of sales and the first quarter results, you'll see that we are quite nicely in schedule and ahead of schedule as far as earnings are concerned. And hence the next question. Now we have a Q1 finished, and all the previous expectations to some people might be either confirmed or not confirmed. So what do you think is, after seeing Q1 results, are the targets still realistic, or will outperform them? We will underachieve them, or will we, somewhere very close? Again, take your time and vote. We'll give you a few more seconds for that. It's not really that difficult of a question, unlike the very last one I have for you. Okay, Elizabeth, I think it was enough time to make this choice. Thank you. Yeah, let's move on. So dividends, let's go into a little greater detail on those. In total, it's 21 € per share that were declared, and those will be split in 2 installments. First of them will be paid on July 5th, with July the 3rd being the ex-date, and the first installment will pay 10 € per share. And second installment, as we discussed earlier, we suggested to have that on Q4. So therefore, on October the 4th is the payment date, with October the 2nd being the ex-date. Now, Supervisory Council, for the first time in history, I believe, we had more candidates than we had vacancies on Supervisory Council. Unfortunately, Mr. Ainars Ozol's, who was proposed by independent financial investors, lacked slightly more than 2% of the capital to vote for him. So he did not make it to the council. But the new council members are Professor Igor Skaliņš, who has been a while ago chairman of Olainfarm's council. Miss Ilana Bileviča is now a chairwoman of the council. Ivars Godmanis is a member of the council and has been in the council previously. Irina Maligina, the daughter of late Valdis Maligins, and Signe Balderis is an ex-wife of late Valdis Maligins, pretty much as heirs are represented in the council. Now, the council also changed remuneration for the council, and now new remuneration has been increased from 13,500 euros net to 40,000 euros net per all the council members. It's not individual, it's not per person, it's for all the council members. Now the question that I was receiving, how much is that going to cost for the company? Now the cost for the company for the council will be almost 50,000 euros per month with that new remuneration. So the new chairman is Professor Ivars Kalniņš. He has, like I said, been previously our chair of the council. He is by far, I would say, the most renowned organic synthesis expert in Latvia. Been author of several pharmaceutical compounds, of which Meldonium, I believe, has been most well known. He's been a member of our council between 2003 and 2006, and has been a member of Council of Windex from 2000 to 2012. So if his achievements as organic synthesis expert are pretty much widely known, then it's up to everybody else to assess how good he's been performing as member of supervisory council in the recent years. So therefore, my question, there was an intrigue, of course, about the composition of the council, now we know the results. And the question is, the new composition, does it make you optimistic, pessimistic, or just cautious? Please take a while to answer. Yeah, it's not, again, a very difficult question. So I'll give you a few more minutes. In the meantime, I see that the number of visitors has increased to 23, which is nice. And I also see that the questions start pouring in. So, of course, I'll try to answer all of them if I'm able to right away. But yeah, I'll pay utmost attention to that. Now, yeah, I think it was our time to answer the question. Thank you for those who voted, and let's move on. Yeah, auditing committee has also been slightly changed. So we have a new auditing committee, and auditing committee is being elected for 2 years. Now it comprises from Mr. Viesurs Gurklaus, and the only member of the auditing committee, and has been there for several, the only member of auditing committee that has been there for several years, Mr. Ivars Godmanis, who is former chairman of supervisory council, and now just a member of supervisory council, and Ms. Ilana Bilevića, who is a vice chairperson of the existing supervisory council. Now the remuneration of the auditing committee has also increased, was increased to 11,500 euros per month. And that's again for all the council, all the committee members combined, not for everybody, but for all of them together. And now, in this case, the total cost of the company will be slightly below 14.3 thousand euros per month. So these, of course, were the main things that we decided in the AGM. Now, because there have been quite a few developments with our company over the last 2 or 3 quarters, I have sort of abandoned the nice practice that I used to have, that is to, in every single webinar, to go into greater detail about some subject, would that be a region or a product or a company. And since I haven't done that for quite a while, and things have changed in Olainfarm, I wanted to ask you, which daughter company of ours would you like to hear greater, to see a greater look into in the next webinar? Given that, of course, no major, changes, no major events happen that might require me to focus on something else. Take a while and vote, and that indeed would be very useful for me when I prepare my next webinar, if ever. So I think it was enough time given. Yeah, thank you. Really would be quite useful to know what your preferences are. Now, yeah, so yeah, it's a sunny day, and I made the sort of compulsory part of the webinar, I believe, reasonably short, and now I'm ready for your questions. Elizabeth?
Salvi, thank you for the presentation. And now I will proceed with the questions in the order they were received. A reminder to those who haven't yet submitted their questions, you can do it in the questions section in the settings panel zone. So the first question is to Salvis, what are your future plans?
Well, I believe, well, thank you for the question. I believe that pretty much regards my professional life, right? So I'll answer in that respect. I mean, when I revoked my resignation when Valerie died in December, and I made it public that you know I'm staying with the company as long as required, as long as necessary, you know, to weather the storm, so to speak. So as long as I'm you know required by the company, and you know intend to remain here. And you know, among other things, do the investor relations duties, which I tremendously enjoy. So that's really my only plan at the moment, as far as my professional life is concerned, at least in sort of in big terms. Elizabeth?
Glad to hear. And so the next question is, which quarter the income tax on dividends will be booked into?
Well, I believe I might be mistaken, but I believe that we have about 2 years period where we still formally pay out the income that has already been taxed according to the previous legislation. So as far as this year income is concerned, I believe there will be no tax on the company for dividend paid, and the taxation on dividends will be happening according to the previous tax legislation. That's my understanding of it. However, this will change in 2 years, meaning that whatever dividend Olainfarm will pay in 2020 would of course be taxed according to the new legislation. And since we haven't really decided on payment dates of dividends in 2020, cannot really answer about taxation on those ones. But my belief is that the dividends that we are going to pay next month and in October, those will be taxed according to the previous Latvian tax legislation. Elizabeth?
Thank you. Can you comment why Ainars Ozols was not approved as a council member?
Well, very simple. He didn't get enough votes. Now the question really is, why did not he get enough votes? Obviously, majority holder didn't help, and minority holders couldn't get. You know, it's mathematically. You know, they have 100% shares and 5 council members. So to be sure that you are in, you need 20%. Now, not all, of course, shareholders do attend meetings, so you can get through with less votes. And in this case, what was required was my recollection, something like 14.5%, which you know. Group that supported Mr. Ozols wasn't able to get, and the majority wasn't willing to help. So just not enough votes. Elizabeth?
Thank you. So the next question is, will you be planning on expanding your sales in Lithuania and Estonia more strongly in the future?
Yeah, yes, we are. In Lithuania, we already have a few products, new products that we are distributing. And so Lithuanian growth is considerable year on year. The same pretty much is true with Estonia. We have now more products for sale, approved for sale in Estonia than previously. But again, the nominal volumes that we sell to Estonia are are quite small, so it's below top 10 or 15 countries radar. But yeah, the plan certainly is in place. Our Lithuanian rep office is strengthened. Our Estonian rep office is strengthened. So we have already demonstrated nice growth in those two countries over the last couple of years, and we do expect more. Elizabeth?
Thank you. Please explain shortly corporate income tax receivable in the company's assets. Where does it come from?
Yeah, that's quite a detailed question. My understanding is that this is deferred income tax that has been there and is now receivable because of the tax change in tax legislation, but that's just my quick guess, to be honest. But if necessary, you could either confirm it. Say if that's something else, either very like I could write answer directly to the person asking this question, or maybe come up with an announcement. But first, I need to figure it out exactly what it is. Elizabeth?
Thank you. The next question is, selling the products in Russia, which risks you see there in 2018?
Well, the main risk for 2018 in Russia I really see is the currency risk, and hence the purchasing power risk. We already lost about 0.5 million euros in Russia, and every time that happens, every time ruble gets cheaper, not only do we have a forex loss, but it also reflects itself on the purchasing power. Of course, as a company that is primarily selling the prescription medicines to Russia, we are not as much subjected to such purchasing power dictated fluctuations as, let's say, producers of over-the-counter medicines or food supplements. But still, that does play a role. So as far as 2018 is concerned, I'd see that's the main risk. If you look further, then Russia have this Pharma 2020 program, which is to some extent targeted at substitution of imports, including pharmaceutical imports. So there might be some competitive advantages given to Russian co-producers. But in order to fight that, we are planning to invest quite significantly this year into research of our existing products and upgrading of their dossiers to protect our positions not only in Russia but elsewhere. But that's again, of course, the longer perspective. As far as this year is concerned, it's quite certainly the value of Russian ruble. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Salvi. That was the last question, so all questions have been answered. As always, recording of the webinar will be available in the Nasdaq Baltic YouTube channel and in company's announcements. And Salvi, thanks for spending the last hour with us, and participants, thank you for joining.
Well, thank you. It was in fact only 30 minutes, but still nice that you shared these 30 minutes of nice summary with us, and see you next time.
Oh, Salvi, sorry, one more question was sent in during this.
Okay.
So, do you see any negative impact from the recent weakening of ruble to Russian sales?
Like I said, negative impact, the immediate negative impact was in Q1 the forex loss of $500,000. And like I said, every single time Russian ruble loses its value, it hits the purchasing power of Russian population, and that pretty much influences the entire pharmaceutical market, pharmaceutical imports, including ours. So these are the two main negative impacts. But again, Russia is a big market. As you saw, it's 27-28% of our sales, and some up to 1/3, and important market for us, therefore. So we're trying to deal that different ways, including trying to price that fluctuation in and things like that. And some extra negative effect could be, of course, the loss of liquidity in Russian companies, and hence the deterioration, slight deterioration of payment discipline. These are all, direct or indirect consequences of weakening of ruble. And, we see them, we know them, and we deal with them as they show up. So I was trying to answer longer because maybe somebody else has come with it.
No more questions. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, and see you next time.